Okay, so this tutorial I'm going to take you through some of the basics of creating materials or textures and how deep you could go with this concept, but we're just gonna really have this as a basic overview. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a little cube here. Let's go full screen. And for materials, we see, if I'm going to go here and just do a quick render, we see that the render and the viewport here are pretty much identical. And this is just a very simple blue box. And if we come up here to material editor, this icon up here, or we can actually hit M on the keyboard, and this will open up our material editor. Now, one of the things that you might want to do when you first open it is to move it down and then come up here and then resize the material editor so that we can scroll through this effectively. And you'll see that where that comes in later, but this is one of the first things I recommend that you do. Okay, the next thing that we'll see here is that we have 6 empty material slots, and if you hit X on the keyboard, we see that we can expand those slots. So we can see 6 or 12, and that 12, is that 15, and then whatever that is. So we can also use the mouse and scroll around the materials like this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and assign this material, this first one we see here is the name of it, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this tester. It's a good idea to get in the habit of naming your materials, just like anything else. But I'm going to go ahead and assign this material to the object. We have 2 ways of doing this. One is we come over here and hit the assign material to selection button, or we can actually drag this out by using the left mouse button and actually drag it onto the surface. My preferred method is just coming here and hitting the assign material to selection. That way whatever is selected is going to get the material, and when you start dragging things like this, it could get nasty if you are, got a lot of objects in the scene. So anyway, your choice. The next thing we're going to talk about is I'm going to scroll down here, and we see we have blend basic parameters and shader basic parameters. Right here is showing you that we have blend, and these are some other types of shaders that we can use. And we notice that each one, while might not be a major change here, we're going to get different rollouts and different parameters to play around with. So we go to metal, we're going to get different things to play around with here, multi-layer. So these are, all different kinds of shaders and different things that we can use to help us create the kind of material or surface that we were going for. So I'm going to come down here. We see under blend basic parameters we have the diffuse and ambient are locked at the moment. I recommend that you leave them locked. I have never seen an instance where having them unlocked in 2 different colors where that was useful. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying I personally have never seen them be unlocked. So if we click here on the swatch, obviously we can come here and we can pick whatever kind of base color that we like, and we hit OK. We can also come over here and crank up the self-illumination, and what this effectively does, I'm going to go ahead and double click here on my empty slot, and we see that it opens up a preview window which I can now create, drag it out full screen. We can get a better representation of what's going on. You'll see here in this preview window that this ball has 2 light sources, one over here and one down here, and we have this shadow effect running this way. As the illumination increases, the main thing that happens is the shadow area goes away. So fully illuminated, there are no shadows being cast onto the surface. Just think of it like a light bulb. You turn a light bulb on, no shadows are going to hit the surface. So that's the self-illumination. We have the opacity, which obviously is how opaque is the surface. And once you start getting into translucent materials, what you can do is come up here to the checkerboard background, and we can turn that on, and we can actually see a little clearer what our translucent material is looking like. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. And let's come down to our specular highlights. This is how shiny the object is. Obviously, it's really shiny. Glossiness is how wide the shininess is going to be on the surface. So if we take glossiness down or have no glossiness, then it's just completely going to be specular over the entire surface. And if we crank this up, we see that the highlight gets smaller, and so 100% is as high as it goes, and that just resembles a completely glossy surface, like an eyeball. The person's eyeball is so wet that it's very glossy, and this is what the kind of effect that you would have on there, playing around with this glossiness. And obviously we can just crank the specular level really high to 999, and it's just gonna overblow. But you know, you never know when this look might be the kind of thing that you're going for. So anyway, let's move on. Obviously here's the chart for how this is working, and you can soften it, do your thing there. The next thing we're going to look at, I'm going to turn this background off. Obviously you can turn on backlit or not, and you can change the basic shapes of how things you know, of the preview material. But anyway, now we're going to take a look at some of the next important properties of our material. The one you'll notice that we're not really seeing the shininess here in the viewport. If I rotate around, actually let the default light in the scene hit the surface of the object, we can actually see that it is a little shiny. But for the most part, we're not going to see all of the wonderful details we do in here in our viewport. So that's why these little test windows, preview windows, are really helpful. I'm going to come down into the maps rollout. We're going to open this up. And again, if you can't seem to scroll this down, then you might want to resize your window. What I like to do is have it at least sized up to where I can see all of the maps in my rollout, and then whatever's up here. So what we're going to do now, like I said, this is just going to be a really basic introduction to the materials and how, excuse me, how to use them, how to set them up, and you know where you can go with them. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at our maps and this guy right here, which says standard. Now if I'm going to click on this, we see that it opens for us the material map browser. Now what's important to know and what's important to keep in mind is the difference between materials and maps. They are not one and the same. They're not synonyms of each other. Materials are a particular entity, and a map is a particular entity. Now, when we hit standard here, and it says it's open the material map browser, what it's actually opening at the moment is the material browser. All these blue dots where we see that they are spheres, just like our preview window here, that's showing that these are materials, types of materials that we can use. And So I'm just going to go ahead and hit a cancel, and we'll leave it as a standard material. You see we have our standard material, all these other ones. Ink and paint is the kind of material that you would use if you wanted to do like a cartoony effect, but we're going to leave it on standard for now. So we just loaded in a brand new empty standard material, and if we go to our maps, let's say I'm going to click on Diffuse, and notice that we don't see the blue spheres, we see these green slots. So this is the map browser. Maps go into materials. You can't put a material into a map. Maps make up our materials. So what we've done now is we have gone to the map channel, the diffuse color channel, which is, just think of diffuse as your color, the actual color pattern that is going to be on the surface of what you see. And then these are all the different maps that we could possibly use. I'm going to go ahead and just do the basic one, which is bitmap. We'll double click on that, and it's going to open up for us. We can go and actually find what kind of image do we want. And the basic place that you're going to find your materials is in your C drive, under program files, Autodesk, and then whichever version of Mac that you're using. And then in here we will have a maps folder, and inside the maps folder you have all these different types. And I'm going to go ahead and do, like, say, metal, and I'll pick let's see, find one that's good. We'll do that one. So hit open. So again, this is C drive, program files, Autodesk, maps, and then whichever subcategory you want. And we'll hit open, and we can see now that image. Scroll down here, and we can see view image. This image has been applied to our sphere, and there's a lot of different things we can do here. I'm going to bypass a lot of these for the moment, and what we're going to talk about is how to get back to where we were. We can see now that our material editor is showing us, instead of standard, we see bitmap, and it's showing us that we're in the diffuse color, map 1 of the bitmap, or the diffuse color channel. Map 1 is a type of bitmap, and then obviously here is the bitmap that we're using. If I come up here and hit the go to parent button, we're now back up at the top level of our material, and hitting this button over here opens up our material tree. And as you can see here, so we have the tester material level, and then beneath that we have this sub-object, if you will, that is creating the material, the diffuse color channel, this bitmap. So again, we'll pop back up, and notice that's a good way of popping in and out of different areas of our material. So we've now loaded this image, and we see that our diffuse channel has an M showing us that the diffuse color channel is being driven by material. And if I raise up our specular level, and let's maybe bring the glossiness down a little bit, we can see that it's shiny on the surface, but we don't see any we don't see that the light is actually being disturbed by these images that we see on the surface. It's because it is just a diffuse. We would now need to include some kind of bump channel. So we'll come down to our bump, and what I'm going to do is just left click and drag this guy down into the bump channel, right here into the none slot, and we're going to choose copy, because we're actually going to change this out. And we see that made an immediate change to the surface. But what I'm going to do is go in here, go back down to our bitmap, click on this, and I'm going to scroll down to this one, which we see is the black and white version of this same image. We'll hit open, and we see that it now has changed again. We can see that these grooves are actually seeming to be a part of the surface here. And what this is doing, what we need to think about now and realize is that unless the channel says color, I'm going to turn this back on, unless it says color or it is the self-illumination channel, all the rest of these are driven off of a grayscale system. So black and white. White being the effect or the channel is in use, completely in use. Black being not in use. So here we have a black and white image showing us where our little grooves are. So white being the bump is in effect, and black the bump is not in effect. It just means we can think of it as higher and lower. So white being high, black being low. And that's what we have on the surface here. So I'm going to go back up to the parent. We can see that we have these two guys set up. And right here we see the amount is 30, so I'm going to type in 200, and we can see that that is increasing the amount of bump that this guy's using. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here and hit a quick render. We see how this is affecting the surface. Let's go down to 50 and I'll hit render, so we can see what this is looking like. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a couple of little test lights. So I'm going to go create light, and I'm going to click an Omni over here, an Omni over here, and maybe one over here. And let's pull this guy up there. Maybe pull this guy over this way. And I'm going to come over here and just quickly change some of these colors. Blue, this dude will be, just give him a little bit of a tint, and this guy will be something like that. Okay. So we can see how the color of the lights and the fact that our materials is being driven by not just the diffuse channel. I'm going to turn this off and hit render. So it's a completely different look that we're getting if we decide to use the bump channel or not. So it's got a lot more surface disturbances. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag a none slot, and I'm going to overwrite the bump channel. And I'm going to click back on bump, and I'm going to come down here and load up a noise. Just double click on noise. And without doing anything, we're just going to go ahead and hit render and see what this is doing. And now what we can take a look at is this icon right here, show and result, which by default excuse me, is set to show. I'm going to turn it off. And we can see that we are now looking at the bump noise map 3, exactly at what it looks like. And if I come down here to the noise parameters, I can check fractal and see how that changes, and turbulence, and see how that changes. So I'm going to go to fractal. Regular and fractal are basically the same. It's just that fractal has taken the regular noise and has basically added more math to it, more calculations. You can see there's more detail. The structure looks basically the same, but fractal has added more detail to it. And this levels right here, I don't know if you can tell it on the video, but on your screen you should notice that we have added even more detail to it at this point. This is 10 is as high as it goes. So we have added as much detail as possibly imagined at this point. So I'm going to turn this back on real quick, and we can see how that has adjusted the surface, and you can see what that has done. And I'm going to lower the size down a little bit, and I'm going to put this back here so we can see. Let's go down to 5. Okay. And we don't have to have this on to render, so I can leave it off. I can see what that has done to the surface. Now let's go to turbulence. See how that has changed it. But what it would be nice is if maybe if we could have a blend between this noise that is adding just a little bit of disturbances and some detail along here, but also have those ridges included here. And that is going to be another kind of map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my bump, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower this down to 2 just real quick, so I can see that this is still, I'm going to I just want to trying to find me a cool little setup here. Yeah, fine. I'll throw a little skylight in here just to brighten the whole thing up. And let's see. Alright, so good enough. Okay, so back to my material editor, and I'm going to turn my show and result on again. So again, I'm going to go in here to the bump channel, and we see we're at the bump, in the bump channel, map 3, a noise map. And I'm going to now click on noise, and this is again going to open up the map browser. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to come down and I'm going to click on mix, and I'm going to hit OK, and this is going to ask me replace map, discard the old one or keep the old as a sub map. We want this one, we want to keep it as a sub map, so hit OK. And now if we go back to the parent, we see that in the bump channel we have a mix map, and in that mix map we have 3 slots. The first one is being housed by the material that we were just using, our noise, and we can have a color 1, and we have a color 2 being driven, and then we have a mix amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on none, I'm going to go to bitmap, and I'm going to load up that first bump image that we had, and we don't have anything, this hasn't changed anything at all at the moment because we're not mixing it. If I come over here and said mix 50%, we see now we are getting some of the our new bump, and we're getting some of the old bump as well. And again, I'm going to move this. I am not happy with where this guy is sitting. Okay, so we can see it down there pretty well. So we can see that we're now seeing this this bump a little bit more. So again, that's without it and with it, and we're getting a nice little bit of a noise mixed over it. And we come in here and see what the turbulence looks like, and that turbulence actually looks even better. So now we're mixing 50-50, and we can come over here and we can see what it would look like if we mix more towards the bump. And so we're getting less of the noise and more of the rays, the height rays that we have here from our black and white image, which is actually not looking too bad. It actually looks pretty good. So I'm actually pretty happy with the way that material looks at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and what we can do is we can call this, let's say, metal ridges, and if we wanted to, we could come in here and say base color map, and I can either go to my parent or I can hit this one right here, go forward to sibling. which we see immediately pops to the mix map. So we're going to call this mix bump, and I will call this guy the bass noise bump. And again, I'll hit go to sibling, which pops over to color 2. And this is going to be, say, black and white ridges. And now we can go back to our parent. So there's our mix bump. And these guys have been named. So if I go back to the top level and we hit our navigator, we can see that this now is what our material tree looks like. We have a diffuse color, a bump, which is a mix map, and it's being driven by these other two. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the same kind of concept and just show you another way that we can use this. I'm going to go into my diffuse channel here, bitmap. I'll click on that, and I'm going to go into mix. Double click, and we're going to keep old as sub again. So now we have the base color map is a mix map, and this is our bitmap, and now we've got another one here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick bitmap one more time, and I'm going to find let's say like this old metal, or maybe this oxidized, this plate oxidized right here. So I'll hit open. Again, we're not seeing any changes because we haven't done any mixing at the moment. So if I mix this 50%, we now see that we're getting a little bit of that rust, those rust stains in to the surface, and looks pretty good. So we've combined these two materials as one. Just blended them together. And keep in mind, what we could do is something like this. I could go into this plate oxidized bitmap, click on it, go mix, keep old again, and we come in here and do another bitmap, and maybe we'll do this one. And I'll go back. So now we have a mix map of the plate oxidized and this metal rust, and maybe I'll mix that one 50%. So I'll go back to the parent. So there is, here's where we were. This is the first map, and now we have a mix map in color 2, which is these two bitmaps that are mixed 50%, and now these two are mixed 50%, which gives us that look. So it adds just another little layer of color into it. So as you can see, you can get really in depth here. But what I'm going to do this time is show you how we can use this mix amount right here. So I'm going to take this back down to 0 just so we can really kind of remember where we came from. And in none, I'm going to use a noise map again. And we can use cellular, smoke. I mean, all of these are very viable choices. But I'm just going to use noise just to keep it simple for us. So we'll use a noise. So what's happening, remember, what this mix is doing, just like our bumps and opacities and anything that doesn't say color or self-illumination, they're driven off a black and white value. Well, it's the same thing with this mix amount. It's looking for black and white values to determine the order of which color is going to be shown here. So if I come in here again, we see, I'm going to turn our show and result off, and we can see what our noise map looks like. So white is we're going to see one of the colors, and black we're going to see the other color. And if we take a look at it now, it basically looks exactly like it did when we just mixed them. No real difference. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell this noise map to be a little bit more demanding on the colors. So again, we could play around with this, and we see that turbulence, we now can see some major issues, some major areas where we can really see one material not. So again, I can turn this off and see what that looks like. So it looks a lot different, not a lot different, but it's a little more subtle in some places. So go in here again and go back to this. And what I'm going to do is go to the fractal. I'm going to show you how we can get even pickier about it. And that's right here with these high and lows. So if high represents we're going to see white. High at 1, which is high as we go, means we're going to see white. Low at 0, which is low as we go, means we're going to see black. So if I bring the high down, we see we're seeing more white. And if I bring the low up, you see we're seeing more black. So let's take a look at what this has done to the material. So see how this area right here has maintained the same look as before, and now we have this oxidation that is creeping in around it. So again, it's a lot different now. We have whole areas where just this guy here has been oxidized and this one's staying the same. And if I bring the size down, we see that we're getting the noise is getting smaller, but we can see that it's still taking up the same amount of space. So we probably would want to go bigger, and now we can get larger areas of emptiness and larger areas of oxidation. So, but the point here being is just showing you how deep we can go. If we take a look at our navigator now, we see that this material is getting a lot crazier, but we're still just not doing anything major. Everything here is still simple. It's just thinking about seeing how we can use these to our advantage. I'm going to drag over this none, and I'm going to copy over this one and do a copy again, and we can see how this is changing it. So this one is the same structure as we have in here, same mix map, everything's the same, but notice how we have some areas are not going to be as shiny as others. We've lost that the ridge bump and everything. Point being here is that you need to you want to try to get an understanding of what these materials will do. How is this channel going to determine the look based off of black and white value? So technically I could do this. I could go in here, use a noise, and I come down here and I see we have these two map channels. So I could technically load up a bitmap into this one, a bitmap into this one, and let's do this one. Let's see, maybe tinfoil. Okay, so now we are mixing these two. It's not even a mix map, it's a noise map. Then we can play around with the size of this guy and make it fractal and all these wonderful things, and just keep playing around with these materials. So anyway, that's really kind of the basic rundown which should really get you started playing around creating your own materials. Hope that you have an understanding of the basics of it right now. I'm going to just go ahead and copy, drag down from the diffuse into the specular level. I'm sorry, the specular color channel, and I'll just do an instance there. When you see that, now what that's doing is it's using all the materials and the colors that are in here to determine how where the shiny places are, that the color of the map of the surface is what we're going to see. Notice we don't see that white anymore. It's still brighter here, but it's the color beneath it that is coming through. And I'm going to use the noise as a specular level, and I'll go ahead and instance that one. So now changing this, notice this is not changing the material in here. Now we have to adjust it here. So you see it's getting very shiny here. But again, it's not white, it's driven off of those colors of the surface. And I'm going to just come down here and get a close-up render of it so we can see what what that look is doing for us as far as generating these this material, the surface of this object. But that's about it for the basics of the material editor. I hope that you understand enough to get yourself started and get playing around with it. Having lights is a huge component of materials. It's the only way to see how shiny your object is going to be and everything. So as you're building your materials, it's good that your lighting, that you at least have some lights that you can see and play around with colors and whatnot. But you really should have the light set up the way your scene's going to be as an end result before you start really playing around with these textures. The last thing I want to talk about, not to completely forgot about this as we were going along, is what I can do now. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to go into the opacity, and I'm going to do a bitmap in here, and I'm going to use this metal plate, one that we've been using. And notice, because I'm using the black and white in the opacity channel, remember white is the effect is showing through, black is the effect is not. So what we have here is we're seeing the color channel showing up where it was white, but we're still seeing the specularity and everything else where the image would be black. What I'm going to do, so I can come in here and press this show map in viewport, and I can see how it looks here in our viewport. And if I go over to my modifier list and add a UV W map modifier to it, and I'm going to, since it's a box object, I'm going to use box, and I'm going to I'm going to open up UV map and go to my gizmo, and now I can move this gizmo around and I can adjust the way that the surface is looking, how this map is being applied, and I can scale this down to put more and more of this image on the surface, or scale it up to see less and less. So now I'm going to try to see if I can line these dudes up a little bit. Okay, so let's just say something like that. So that's the point of that gizmo, is we can use it as an interactive visual way of adjusting the way the map is falling on the surface. Or we can come in here and tell it to tile more in one direction, get a different look. Tell it to tile less in another direction or more in another direction, and get another look. So I'm going to bring this guy down like so, and I'm going to take a render. So I'm going to see what that's looking like. But the point here, obviously I'm just using this as an example. The point is I can go into the material and tell it to show here, and we can see the black and white map. I can go back, and now that I'm at the top level, and when I hit show map in viewport, I can actually see what the effect is going to look like as a whole when it as it determines as it relates to the surface of our object. So I'm going to come down here and hit reset. You can see what that looks like. I'm going to set this back to 1 and 1. Okay, so again we can see there's the shininess showing through. So that is another really important thing about the material editor, which I honestly can't believe that I forgot to do when we were going through this guy. But notice I can, at any level of the material, come down here and see just what this one looks like. I can go down here and see what just this one looks like. This one, what these two look like together, what these look like together, what the noise looks like, what the whole thing looks like. So that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about, just to be clear about it, because that's a big thing, is you want to see what your material looks like on the surface of your object. So I hope that you learned something, and I will see you next time.